You know, the American school system is messed up when you get more use out of your college textbooks as a nice prop for your tripod, rather than, actually using them for class. What is up, you guys? It's me, your girl, booKCase. How are you doing? This reading month was a trip. I had the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's a joke. I'm beautiful. At least I tell myself that in the morning to avoid the crippling depression of waking up alone every day. But you know what I have? Books. And this fancy new setup, this higher quality that I can't stop bragging about because I'm so in love with it. I mean, look, you can see the detail in my face now. I don't know if that's a good thing yet. So my reading was honestly all over the place this month. I managed to get in some rereads. I DNF'd like 2 books. I read a fantastic book that is now at the last moment made it onto the best books at the end of the year list. Maybe not the best books, but one like the best characters. I read some magical realism because apparently I love torturing myself. And I read one book simply because I got a message from one of my dear friends, my first subscriber, yelling about this book. And I'm like, oh, I need to, see what this is about. Let me pull up my notes on my stupid old phone. Haha, I don't need you anymore, fool. Okay, so if you guys remember from a library haul I did in the past, I picked up Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas and also The Starless Sea by Morgenstern, whatever her name is. Same person who wrote The Night Circus. I was not a fan of The Night Circus, but apparently I'm a masochist. So I picked up her next book, even though I hate magical realism. Both those books, Crescent City and The Starless Sea, I DNF'd them hard. Let's go with the Starless Sea books because there is actually a bit that I did like about it, but in the end I just had magical realism over description, mysticalness overload and was like, no, my brain hurts, stop. So Into the Starless Sea is about a great mini stories that come together to form the ultimate story, which ultimately takes a physical form in the way of a book called, I believe, Sweet Sorrows. Do not quote me on that. I kind of deleted this book from my brain for my own sake. This book, Sweet Sorrows, not only details the life of a pirate and his love, who may or may not be a metaphor, is totally a metaphor. Everything in magical realism is a metaphor and I hate it. It also details the life and the ways of the secret, let's just call it cult of monks dedicated to stories. Like, they're so dedicated to other people's stories that they burn their tongues out and vow never to tell stories of their own, which seems to me kind of like counterintuitive. Oh, we love stories so much that you can't tell your own stories. It's just mean, But this book, Sweet Sorrows, also details the childhood of this one boy whose name escapes me. We're gonna call him Paul. Paul, one day in his childhood, is walking through a back alley and he finds this just really cool door. Like, it's painted onto the brick and he feels like it's 2-dimensional, but he also feels like he could actually reach out and open the door. However, he decides not to, and nothing remarkable happens for the rest of his life until one day in his college years he gets the chance to go through the door again. But before even that, our boy, while touring through his college library, he finds the actual copy of the book Sweet Sorrows and is just flabbergasted at how, oh my gosh, there's a little chapter about him, about that time in the alley where he decided not to open the door. And he's captivated by the last word of his story, oh, he decided not to go through the door, not yet. And he's like, not yet, so does that mean something in my life will come to fruition? Will something better happen? Now, our guy Paul, I actually really liked him. Paul was nice. However, it's the prose, of course, of this story that makes me want to scream. This book is written beautifully. Honestly, it has imagery everywhere, and I can't stand it. Why, you ask? Now, I accidentally deleted a little screenshot of a review I found online for this book, and it captured my feelings perfectly. I mean, this book with the story above all stories, the cult of monks who keep stories, our main character who's obsessed with continuing his own grand story. Yeah, story is really important to these guys and to the author. However, and like that reviewer said, I think, the Starless Sea is so obsessed with good storytelling that it forgets how to write a good story. And I completely agree. I'm like, yes, justified, invisible stranger on the internet. Too smart. Aside from our main character, nothing else really captivated me. I believe most of the story was because our main character lost that magical book, Sweet Sorrows, was getting the book back. We get 2 other side characters introduced to the story, and the insta-love for one character hits like a truck. Someone's gonna be kissing the other person by end of 10 chapters. Oh, we've been on this mystical hunt for 3 days. Let us make out. There's this other character who is a girl. That's all I can remember about her. I think her name was Mirabelle, Annabelle, Isabel, Alicabelle, I don't know. Bluebell. Anyways, this Belle girl, she is supposed to have like this legendary relationship with one other character I have not mentioned yet. Like they are literally star-torn lovers, not star-crossed. Like you just torn them apart and threw them across the galaxy. Their relationship is never believable because the two characters were never on the same page together. So like the tales of their great epic love affair was only relayed from like third-person accounts. So honestly, the story wasn't keeping me. I only liked one character and that's not enough for me. And regarding the story again, there's just two, like the story's like this little kernel. It's this little seed in the dark dirt. However, that dark dirt, that's like the imagery. It's supposed to be fertile and a nice black color, really rich and moist. Fertile, nutrient. We're supposed to like help that little kernel grow through it. But no, this book just like packs on the soil, like just drowning that seed deeper and deeper into the dark recesses of the earth. It will never see the light of day because there's just too much packed around it. Pretty good metaphor, Maya. Oh my gosh, am I becoming a magical realism author? Someone shoot me now. Speaking of magical realism, my first subscriber, I know you're going to be watching this, I'm about to tell stories about you. She recently betrayed me and said not only does she not like dragons, okay, that's the type of person she is, she's great, but it's dragons. So she doesn't only not like dragons, she told me, because she wants to be an author too, she told me she wants to write in magical realism. It's a good thing I love her, because I can forgive her for this. Anyways, Into the Starless Sea just does not float my metaphorical boat. And next up, we have that Sarah J. Maas book, Crescent City, a house of earth and air, earth and blood. There's a lot of red on the cover, so yeah. Oh, and there's a lot of blood in the book. I did like that part. So, I DNF'd this at like 100 pages, and it's a big book too. I think it's like 700 pages. But I knew a couple pages in this was gonna be a DNF. But I was like, this is Sarah J. Maas. This is my first Sarah J. Maas book. She's a big author. I should at least give her a chance. I will never ever doubt myself again. So we all know Sarah J. Maas. She wrote the Throne of Glass series. She wrote Akatar, A Court of Thorns and Roses, all those things. None of them I have read. I still kind of want to, but I also feel like I really kind of aged out of it. Or have I? I mean, I love Warner from Shatter Me. I do like those cringy bad boy types. But I had heard about Crescent City, and I knew it was Fae, which I love Fae books. But I had heard, not really whispers, more like shouts everywhere, that this is her maturest book yet. It's gonna be so edgy and epic. And I'm like, I don't like edgy and epic. And I'm an adult. I can take maturity and stuff like that. So apparently I mistook what mature meant. Like I just thought we were going to be dealing with really difficult topics and stuff like that. Apparently mature book just means we have like excessive amounts of cussing, like just everywhere, mixed in with the most immature characters who are basically young adult protagonists, just a little bit older, but not up here where it counts. But now these cringy youths have access to nightclubs and drugs. That's what mature apparently means. So that's already not my jam. Like, take away the toast. It's not worthy of jam. Honestly, it gives me to sleep in a sea of... Where am I pointing? Oh yeah, to sleep in a sea of star vibes. Where it's like, oh, it's an adult book just because we cuss a lot. I'm like, you can cuss. Just make the characters good, please. That's all I'm begging for. Don't be like little 15-year-olds shoved into adult bodies. But not only that, in Crescent City, there was so much info dumping from the start. Like, I am going to do a separate review for this book. I have like all the points that I want to make on a Word document. I just need to write a script for it. And then y'all will see. You will see. Also, in this really Fae magical world, it blends in with like the business, not really human world, because it's not like anywhere near us or like us. It's more like a bunch of Norse mythology taking over their own little separate world. But even though these are like Fae creatures and mythological beings, they exist in a world like ours. Like, they go to college, they make cell phones and stuff like that. And I just thought that was so dumb. Because my favorite thing about those Fae books is the whimsicalness, that's not a word, but I'm going to use it, of their own little private worlds. Like, you don't need technology, you have magic, that's the whole thing. The only thing that kept me reading for 100 pages, the book did have these really cool wolves, and I love wolves. And there was actually one scene that made me like go, oh, Maybe I was really tough on all these characters because there was blood everywhere. But still, that main character of ours, oh my gosh, she was annoying. She's basically the character equivalent to a high-pitched yell. And I was just looking at my notes really quick, and we're gonna go back to a Starless Sea for just a second. We also have to solve a mystery in that book. The mystery involves finding 2 keys. One is made of gold, so you gotta find a gold key. The other clue is a key that hasn't been forged. So this is probably a spoiler, but I don't care. You need to hear the ridiculousness of this context. So a key that's never been forged. What do you think that is? I don't know. The key of your own imprisonment by your own doubting thoughts, something like that. The key to your imagination, the key being willpower, something metaphysical like that. No, a key that hasn't been forged. You stupid person. You should have got this in the first place. It's a hotel key. That is dumb. Cause yeah, it's not forged in like a blacksmith shop, but forged means make. You still have to make a hotel key. That's dumb. So yeah, after those 2 really disappointing reads from the library, I was like, you know, it's the end of the year. We should really just like end this off with a few bangers and reread a good favorite series of mine. So I picked up the Escape from Furnace series, book 1 being Lockdown. I reread 4 of the books, and by the time I got to the 5th book, I was like, I'm kind of reread out. Let's find some new books now. But this series always picks me up because there's nothing but blood and guts everywhere. Let me explain. Now, I really love this series. Like, every book is either a 5 or 4 stars. But for some reason, I always feel like I need to downplay the awesomeness of this series because this book is about escaping from the worst penitentiary on the whole earth. It is Furnace. It's literally built under the earth. The logo for this entire series is beneath heaven is hell and beneath hell is furnace. That's how hot it is. That's how dark and broody. And we are with our main character, Alex, who was unjustly imprisoned for a crime he did not commit. I mean, he was doing one other crime, but he did not do the crime they put him to jail for. And this is his escape that goes over multiple books. Like, these books are really tiny. Like, they're less than 300 pages. But that's how hard it is to escape from this awful place. Like, it takes multiple books, and like, the stakes are really high. Plans don't go as planned. So I think even though it's like the most unrealistic thing, thankfully, it's done in a realistic way. I read this book when I want to watch things explode, but don't want to make things explode myself and go to jail. So this is how I live vicariously. But like I said, I feel the need to downplay it because it's like advertised on Goodreads as a young adult book, but I think it's more middle grade, just by the plain way it's written. And there is no grand character arc. Like, our boy Alex is our boy. Throughout the whole series, he gets darker and darker, but nothing really profound. It's just fun, and I love it. It's also way too overdramatic. Like, whenever someone is angry, spit and foam is always flying out of their mouth. We always get these edgy emo monologues, and I love it. It's just a good time. So if you kind of want something lighthearted but in the most cruel way, because I mean, children get eaten, then read it. It has my endorsement. My dark heart loves this jazz. Book 4, Fugitive, is my favorite. And so this book gave me like a nice little energizing boost for the month. Because right after I finished this series, I received a very interesting text from a friend on Discord. Again, my first subscriber, that beautiful Norwegian man who is a woman. She knows what I'm talking about. Y'all don't need the context. You'd like the context. But for her privacy, I will not tell you the context. I just scrolled through the section where I told her which V.E. Schwab books to read. Very good author. Highly recommend. This has taken so long, but it's worth it when I find it. Found it. Juicy, juicy. Okay, might have to censor a few things. This is the messages I got out of nowhere. Bruh, I am mad. You mentioned earlier in the year how some of your favorite authors wrote good books, but then their next one sucked. Dude, it happened to me too. Then she sends me a picture of this book, Mexican Gothic, which I've heard everywhere on booktube. Like, I knew I kind of wanted to read it because I heard it everywhere, but I did not know the premise of it yet. But just looking at it, I was like, okay, it's a thriller in a Gothic setting. So my friend sent me the cover, and she kept on going. Look at this book. The cover is so pretty. The summary sounded spooky. And I was like, yes! So I waited a year for this sucker, and I finally get to read it, yes. And what do I get? Literally stupid. What the crap? I don't get it. Her last book was awesome. It was Aztec gods in 1920s Mexico in a battle to regain the underworld with a forbidden romance. It was everything I didn't know I needed in a book. It was beautiful. And this, what do I get? Freaking I'm so mad. Why? Why am I having such a hard time with books lately? And now they want to make a mini-series on Amazon about it. Why? The other book deserves a freaking mini-series, not this. And then I reply, oh my gosh, booktube loves that book and I nearly get it every time I see it in the stores. Lol, I think sounds kinda awesome. I mean, the concept is pretty cool, but the build-up was like, ta-da! I was expecting some kind of spooky spirit or a curse. Plus, for 90% of the book, the main chick wanders around this rotting house with gross, creepy nightmares, and nothing actually happens until the last part of the book. Wow, really? That's cool that it's loved by booktube, I guess. You hear that? Whole of booktube, she's calling you out. But her last book was even better. I don't know, maybe my expectations were too high since I loved her other one. Not gonna lie, I'm a little disappointed. Then I chime in. Now I just need to read it, then we can talk more about it. By all means, go ahead, but I'm super disappointed by it. But if you do, then at least someone will understand my rekindled distaste for So then we concluded the conversation. I put Mexican Gothic on hold for my library, and I received the book about 2 weeks later. It was the same copy that she was currently reading. She tried to like slip a note in there for me to find, but she couldn't figure out a way for it to work. So I've read Mexican Gothic just because of my friend's hatred for it. However, she had already spoiled the big twist for me because of these texts. You see the judgment, first subscriber. Not cool, but it's actually cool. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I like rants of all kinds. So I personally cannot review most of the integrity of this book, but I did give it a 3. I asked my friend a bit later like what specific points she did not like about the book. One of them was again just like 90% of the book being in one location in this creepy house. Now me as a thriller reader, I'm very used to books just being in one setting, so that did not bother me at all. But first, what is this book about? So Mexican Gothic is about this young woman whose name I cannot remember as always, so I'm gonna call her Sophia. Sophia is just like a sparkling socialite on the Mexican scene. You know, she's the belle of every ball. She's toying with all the boys who wants her affections but just can't keep her around for that long. She's never satisfied, wants to go on to the big city, but Papa won't let her. But then one day, Papa tells her to come to her office. Something terrible has happened. They've received a very strange letter from her cousin who just recently got married. The letter is just filled with like nonsensical rambling, but the main gist of it is, help me, like I'm basically a prisoner here, along with some other weird things that don't make sense. So the dad takes a look at this letter. He's like, well, this seems like a fine predicament to send my untrained daughter out into the world into. So our girl Sophia goes out to the creepy house to find out what's wrong with her cousin. Is it just mental illness or is something bad happening? That's all I can tell you. So me just like hearing and seeing the cover for this book all the time, I thought it was a thriller. Like thriller, suspense, mystery. That's it. You need to know, if you have not read this book yet, that this is also sci-fi fantasy. I had no clue at first. If I did not know, based on what my friend told me, that the sci-fi and fantasy elements were in this book, I would have been so confused. I'd be like, what kind of genre is this? I thought it was thriller. I personally really, not really liked, but I did like the sci-fi elements that were introduced because these things are actually found in nature. It's a spoiler thing that I don't want to tell you about. And these things do behave in the way that they are portrayed in this book, just more like a magnified supernatural level of it. So I did like that. I was okay with the setting. The house was actually really creepy. The imagery made me uncomfortable, and that's good for a book. However, my main problems were 2 problems. The main character, Sophia. Sophia comes across as really, really flighty. She's an airhead. She's very vain, in my opinion. She cares a lot for her cousin, and that's why she's here in this creepy house, to make sure she's okay. But she also apparently has these really big aspirations to get, I believe, a master's degree in archaeology at one of the big universities in her country. Her papa won't let her, unless, like, he'll let her if he just, like, checks on the cousin and makes sure she's fine. So, you know, master's degree in archaeology. You would think she's super smart then, right? Strangely not, but kinda yes. Like, she's really flighty and just kind of stupid in my opinion. But then all of a sudden she'll just like blurt out all these like chemical facts because her dad owned like a dye industry or something like that. Like just random bouts of superior knowledge that does not seem in place with her character at all. Like it's super random. My second point in this is that this book does not try to hide who the villain is at all. The second sentence out of his mouth is his villain spiel. Like you meet him at dinner, he says, "Oh, how are you? I will now take over the world." Exactly. exactly like that. Like, this is the sentence that came out of his mouth. I'm gonna pronounce some words very incorrectly, I apologize, but I am stupid. So, villain guy comes down and the second sentence out of his mouth is asking our girl Sophia her opinion on, do you believe, as Mr. Vasconcelos does, that it is the obligation, no, the destiny of the people of Mexico to forge, oh gosh, hold on, to forge a new race that encompasses all races? Then he goes on and on about how only beautiful people should make beautiful babies, and then he leaves. That is it. That's the villain. This book, just remembered, had the, this book also had the weirdest chapter endings. Like, it would be really high-paced, like, oh, we gonna make it out alive? Is this a dream or is it reality? Then the last paragraph would end on our girl Sophia calmly examining the specks of dusk floating on a ray of sunshine. It really skewed the pacing and the whole energy of the book. I honestly do want to read the other book of this author because my friend loved it and I love the cover of it. But this book, Mexican Gothic, is just like a big shrug to me, like, I wasn't really that impressed. But I did like the little sci-fi bits of it. Okay, so I had 2 DNFs. I reread 4 books. Read Mexican Gothic. I also had my first ARC review this month, and I have already privately talked with the author about it. But anyways, I have room for 3 more books on my TBR. And you know, I've already made my end of the year list, like best characters, best books, worst villains, all that fine stuff I love doing at the end of the year. Technically, I do it at the beginning of the year in January. So I picked a book series I thought wouldn't impress me that much, but would still be good. However, I ended up loving it. It is the Legend of Drizzt series, which is a Dungeons and Dragons book. I love this book so much. Well, it's 3 books in one. It is the Dark Elf trilogy of our adventurer Drizzt. I do not know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, only what Stranger Things has told me. So I don't know if Drizzt is like a really prevalent character in the games. However, I now love him and his magical panther, whose shortened name is Gwen. Also, just a little shout out to this book for making up words that have like 6 or 8 syllables. I'm really happy. I can't pronounce things with 3 syllables. Like the city, Menzoberranzan. The panther's name, shortened is Gwen, but it's Guinevere. I always read it as Guinevere. However, this book takes place in Menzoberranzan. I don't care if I'm not pronouncing that right. I will now just call it Menzo. Anyways, in the Drow city of Menzo, tucked away deep in the bowels of the earth. Menzo is the capital of the Drow society. The Drow are like your intense power hierarchy society. You only get to somewhere or like elevate your house's station if you knock off some other family's house. This city is based on murder, theft, betrayal, everything. All because Loth the Spider Queen demands it so. The females are greater than the males, and it is continually preached that all other races beside the Drow are wicked and awful and should just die. Apparently they were chased or like retreated from the surface world by the surface elves, which are the good elves. But if you hear the Drow version, the good elves are the most horrible, wicked spirits on all the realms. So these Drows are like just captivated and consumed by Rise to like elevate their power and status. However, during one night's raid, our little boy Drizzt is born into the Duerden household, which is like 9th ranked in the city. Moving on 8th now, because his birth and like the pain of childbirth allowed his mother to conjure this really big spell that allowed her just to like obliterate the opposing family that they were battling during his like birth. Drizzt was originally meant to be sacrificed for like victory in the battle. Also, he was 3rd born, and it's tradition for the Drow to get rid of the 3rd male baby. However, one of his brothers has a little uh-oh in battle, and Drizzt is no longer the 3rd boy. He's 2nd boy now. So they keep him. So Drows, they have red eyes. So they look at baby Drizzt, who's like unnaturally calm and quiet for a baby. They're like, yo, why is his eyes lavender? Is he blind? And they're like, no, we cannot have weakness. So they're about to kill him again, but then he's like following their movement, so he's not blind. He has just different colored eyes. So they're like, this is highly peculiar, but we will keep you just in case. And our boy Drizzt is just like born with this golden core. Like, he's a nice boy. Even though he's been raised through like some awful stuff, raised by his cruel mother, his even crueler sister and their nasty wets, made to clean and basically treated like a servant until he's old enough to go learn how to fight. He's still kind of optimistic and just very naive and innocent. He gets trained by the Duerden household's weapon master, whose name is Zack, the only normal name in this book. And Zack is actually Drizzt's father, but he keeps it on the hush-hush. And he sees like the niceness of his son, and Zack has that inner spirit too, and he's like, maybe I should actually just kill Drizzt to like preserve that innocence and not see my boy corrupted, because he's about to go off to the academy and they're just gonna like warp his innocent mindset. Because Drizzt, even though he won't hurt a fly, he is the best fighter ever. He had the best training, he's just a natural at it. So our boy ends up going to the academy and some wickedness unfolds. He starts to pick apart the lies of his society and he knows he wants something more than this. The first book was so much fun, and even like it had very funny bits to it too. It's kind of written in a lighthearted way, even though a bunch of like fighting and bloodshed is happening. I loved it. I love Gwen, the Panther character. The second book, which is Exile, is actually my favorite of this trilogy because our boy is on the run. He abandoned his society and his people, but now he has to live with his own conscience in the deep recesses of exile, alone in the underground tunnels. And you know, that solitude for about 10 years will drive you loopy, so our boy's going a little crazy. We also meet so many interesting characters, like a dwarf who has like pickaxes for hands. We meet a hook horror who isn't a hook horror. He's a cute little peach who was turned into a vicious monster. We meet this psychotic human wizard, and we also get to see the Society of the Mind Flayers, which I was super excited to read about, and their whole like little community was so fun to read about. The third book is called Sojourn, and if you know what sojourn means, it just means like a break. So it's really a bunch of like filler of our boy Fitz discovering the surface world, but it was Drizzt and I love him as a character. So I was very happy still reading that too, and just hoping my boy actually finds a home that accepts him. So I gave the first book and the third book 4 stars. The second book was 5 stars. My only complaint was in the first book because Drizzt is our main character, but for the longest time reading that first book, we weren't in his point of view at all. We were reading from other people's point of view, but now because I read the whole trilogy, I'm like, that was actually a good move. It let us like see what the society was like from different points of views, and it built up our introduction and our like point of view reading from Drizzt's perspective. So I am honestly super excited to read the next books in these books. I'm excited to read the next books in the Drizzt series, and I want to play some Dungeons and Dragons now. So y'all, that was my exciting wrap up. I read a really good Drizzt series, reread a favorite series of mine, read a book my friend hated and made me want to read, and had 2 DNFs. I usually have 2 DNFs a month. They haunt me wherever I go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do believe I am parched. My throat is hurting, so I need to hydrate. You are the whips of fire flaring off of the sun's back, and I am out of here. Stay ready, my friends.